I just kind of give a little brief background of my brother, business partner Nick, and I, but I'll kind of recap that real quick. We grew up in the restaurant industry with our father. I started working in the restaurant. Technically, I was 8. Dad put me in work to do some hosting, but I really started as a little hostess. But I really got my roots starting when I was around 15 years old. Same with Nick, my brother, business partner. So we've had collectively a little bit over 30 years of experience working in the restaurant industry, building teams, managing teams, delegating and leading teams. And it's an honor now to be here and kind of share what we've learned. I do want to say we're not, superstars and scholars in this, but we have learned a lot hands-on and in our studies. So we're excited to kind of share some information with you. It's kind of fun because our father has really been our mentor for the past 15, 18 years, and it's kind of interesting now to see how we are helping and mentoring him in his day and his business at Big 3 now. Back when he first started his businesses, it was when it was hard to get a job. When you had a job, you were blessed to have that, and you did everything you could to keep that job. But now times are changing and we kind of have to adapt. And we have tons of different generations now in the workforce. And so with that said, we want to try to help provide information on how to lead a multi-generational workforce and to have a higher retention rate. Did you want to add anything?
Not yet.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm just going to start with why it's important. Also, I do want to add that I did put a lot of text on these slides to be able to share with you guys afterwards, so don't feel the need to have to try to take notes on every little detail. I did export this as a PDF, so y'all can have that information afterwards as well. So to go back, why it's important to manage multi-generation. You want to retain higher retention rates. You want to provide a homogeneous work environment. Knowing the set of skills and contributions that every generation kind of brings to the workforce, you can help provide better proper positions and encouragement to each of those members. We all have different expectations, priorities, values, and communication styles. So it's important to understand what those needs are and to be able to cater to those. When your employees feel heard, they feel understood and valued more, and they're more likely to invest their time and energy into the projects and jobs that you're asking of them. And truth is, we all need all generations to be able to make organizations effective. We couldn't do this without the knowledge and experience from all different age groups. The most important thing to kind of gather from this is that every person is different and you can't manage every single person the same. So understanding the generation they come from can kind of help provide better information and better work and leadership to them.
This is a very important point because it really is about communication, effective communication. And you can't treat everybody the same, and it's effective communication. And so when I was working in the dining halls in college, I was working with people that were there for 15, 18, 20 years, and they were much older than the student staff. And it was a very interesting dynamic between the young students who really didn't have a work ethic and people that had been there for so long. And there was a lot of massaging all the different age groups.
Yep. I do want to touch on why having a high retention rate is important, if that's something that y'all have learned. When you rehire and have to constantly rehire, you're spending a lot of time on training, which is a huge financial burden, and time. Time is of the essence, and time is money. And being able to, lessen that new training up front and having to have that financial burden will help in the long run. Guests also benefit from seasoned employees. So, our bar staff that we've had and some of our management team that we've had for 8 years, they build these special relationships with the guests and the clientele. And it takes a lot of time to develop and learn that and that knowledge of the business. And, you have better guest retention and better guest return rates. So I know this is more in the restaurant industry, but it can be for merchandising. I mean, it can be in any type of brand. We're very relationship based. We kind of pick the businesses that we work with based on building those relationships with them. And with the right leadership, that will also help increase productivity.
Over the years, one of the things that I've heard the most about from customers is oh, there's a lot of new faces in here. And customers are very perceptive to that. And so sometimes employment ebbs and flows. We've been at our Victory Village location, we've been open for 11 years as a restaurant. And we've experienced ups and downs in the economy and everything. And the staff retention is very important. People feel comfortable. They're more excited to go back. It's and we're very proud over these 11 years to have staff that's been with us for so long. That really helps when we're not there.
All right, so how do we do this? How do we manage different generations? As a leader, it's important to provide the knowledge for each generation and to rethink hiring practices, managing styles, rewards, and training. As I mentioned before, each team member needs to be handled and managed different depending on their values and their needs and their generation.
There's the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but really you can. You just have to approach it. You can't approach everybody the same way.
Yep. Offering ongoing formal feedback, modifying behavior performance individually to cater to their values and expectations. Also technology, when you're hiring different generations, you want to make sure that you're providing the right tools and education to those generations. I mean, my father, we try to use a ton of virtual when it comes to Google Docs and the Zoom calls and group texts on GroupMe, and he's trying to adapt slowly to that. But the newer generation, I mean, it's just a blink of an eye, and they know how to adapt to that. But if your job requires Excel and requires these meetings, you want to make sure that you're providing some training and education to them to be able to feel comfortable in their work. Comfortability and knowledge is power, and they'll be more comfortable and be able to give better performance with knowing the technology and expectations behind that.
Even though over the past year, businesses have really had to adapt, evolve, and through the businesses evolving, people have adapted, but making sure that through all these changes, we're not leaving staff behind.
Yep. So there are some challenges and opportunities with this. We like to call weaknesses and challenges opportunities, so I just wanted to include that in there. But it's important to have clear ideas on how leaders can leverage the knowledge about complex demographics and the modern workforce to get better results. I know it can be daunting at first, and it does seem like you may have to put more effort at the beginning, but in the long run and through working with the employees, you'll get a much better successful work. So for communication, virtually all generations value clarity and conciseness in communication. They're seen from managers and leaders. Their generation influences the way they process and respond to that information better. Clear channels on soliciting feedback should be established. So if you're going to have written verbal warnings, if you're going to have sit-down reviews constantly, you're going to provide kind of strength, weakness charts, etc. It's important to kind of establish that at the beginning, so you're not catching anyone off guard and understanding kind of what they're expecting from you on that. One of our managers, she's amazing, and she only likes to have face-to-face, sit-down, handwritten meetings. Where some of my other managers, the younger generation, they're comfortable with having the Zoom meetings and FaceTime meetings, but depending on the generation, we'll touch on, just make sure that you're understanding kind of what they want and setting those expectations at the beginning.
As people progress in age within the business, there's always going to be younger people coming in that are eager to grow, eager to learn more. People grow and advance in different stages. So establishing the chain of command and more or less who to report to and who do you get what you need from. And as younger people start to become managers and have to oversee people that have been there and seasoned but don't want to grow, it's something to pay attention to. Effective communication.
Yep. Communication is the number one thing that I have learned over the years is know how to provide the right communication, know how you're communicating properly, and making sure that they receive that communication the right way. Workplace values. So this is something huge across the board. Specifically, all generations too are different when it comes to this. The clearest split, the biggest split is the idea of working to live versus living to work. Older generations consider the relationship with the company to be very, very important, requiring and demanding a lot of self-sacrifice in exchange for that financial security. But younger generations are tending to view these relationships as disposable. The grass is always greener on the other side. There's so many jobs that are disposable, which COVID you could look at up and down, so I don't really want to kind of bring that in. But you can see the growth in just our community and our development. I mean, across the street from exit 12, where we're at Halcyon, Longhorn, that whole development now is growing as well. So they value the opportunity to achieve that work-life balance, but also appreciate professional development with knowing their trajectory and what that growth is going to be. The worst thing you can do is false promise people something, especially the younger generation. Being transparent and honest and knowing that growth trajectory is really important. One of our GM at Halcyon, she's been with us for over 8 years now. This summer will be 9 years. And she has really, really slowly worked her way up from the server to now the GM at Halcyon and to continue to grow with us. But setting that path for her was really important and crucial to know. And she's lifelong and committed to us, even with that younger generation being disposable, but with us providing her that growth and working on that and towards that and meeting those goals has provided her, that respect and appreciation for the business. Autonomy versus teamwork. So something that we've, experienced, especially in the restaurant industry, is we like to give, the young folks a chance. We like to give the older generation a chance. And we really take a lot of pride and value in having such a wide range of age groups within our workplace, but that does bring some challenges. That does bring, some issues with the older generation and the younger generation. And so knowing how to, provide that harmonious work environment and the teamwork is really, really important. So as America ages and generational shifts, it's inevitable. We just have to be proactive as a leader with these approaches to be productive rather than disruptive to the workplaces. Regularly reviewing and praising can help build their loyalty, establishing meetings together with the team are great ways to kind of help with that.
Letting people know that they have an option to be heard, or just to be able to have options to be able to talk to. I think establishing meetings with your direct below you and each direct below them to establish a communication chain, whether it's weekly sit downs or monthly all staff meetings. But having every staff member knowing that they have the opportunity to have an opinion or just to voice an opinion is very strong.
Yep, and also holding your team members accountable. There's different ways of holding them accountable, but making sure that if you set these policies and you for the team and you're wanting those policies to be upheld, it's important to make sure that you are, holding them accountable and making sure that they are being on time, that they are rolling silverware. That's a really good example, but those things really do help build the team together, and knowing how each generation reacts to feedback will really help you then be able to have an effective and harmonious team. So these are kind of the 5 generations that we're going to go over. So pre-boomers are actually only 2% of the workforce right now. So I'm not going to touch too much on the pre-boomers. They are slowly, getting out of the workforce and retiring. But it's important to know that they do have the disposable income, that they are, coming out. But not going to touch too much on them for the workplace specifically. So here's kind of a chart so you see the percentage of the different generations and the percentage of the current workforce right now. The Generation Z, the youngest, they're coming through right now. So you'll kind of start seeing that these numbers evolve over time, but just kind of a good breakdown. All right, so baby boomers. Before I get started, does anyone have questions so far? Laura, is there everyone good? Questions at the moment?
No questions in the chat, but I did want to ask you one question before you moved into the specific generations, if you guys don't mind. And as you're giving this presentation, I thought to myself, she just gave the disclaimer of you guys not being experts, but just this material obviously showcases how much of an expert y'all are, and you don't even realize it. So a question about the workplace values that you mentioned. You talked about the older versus younger generations, and kind of the perspectives of older generations having that investment in the company, in that type of ideal, versus younger generations looking for the next best opportunity. Can you speak at all about how that also can work to the detriment or to the advantage of a company goal? Because I know you guys have goals for your business, and is there a way that you can kind of leverage those two groups in both aspects to help the business gain those goals?
Yeah, so something that I've learned over the years in my studies was you don't have to know everything. You try to hire the people around you that can help grow the business and things that you may not know at the top of your head. So being able to have, the different, the younger group coming in to be able to provide the new trends and fads and what's going on. I mean, TikTok and all that stuff, I'm currently part of that and I'm not in that. So, to be able to see where the growth of the different social media platforms are growing, is really interesting, and it matters. I mean, people engage on these social media platforms. They want to come and see your product if you post an awesome picture of it or your merchandising. So trying to bring, that in, but also then getting the older generation kind of caught up to speed with that. But it's really them understanding the importance that we do all bring something to the table, and that, just because your values are different doesn't mean that it's wrong. And how can we make this all work together? It does get hard at some point where, we have had an older manager, stay with us for years and years. At some point they could run their course within the business and our needs and values. But we always have communication, always have meetings, and always try to see how we can fit them in and how it's going to work out well. But at the end of the day, we all bring something to the table, and it's important to bring it all together.
Well, and your answer is a great segue into the other question that we have, which is relating to your customer base. So the question is, and I know this moves a bit off of the workforce, but I think your customer base obviously defines how you're leading your workforce. The question was, if this baby boomers chart that you're about to share with us is the majority of your customer base or your client base.
Was the question, are the baby boomers a majority of our customer base? Honestly, no. Our clientele is every demographic, every different generation, but that's how we built our business. We wanted to have that encompassing. We have the 21-year-olds coming in to celebrate their birthday. We have 25-year-olds coming in for first dates. We have families coming in with large families, first baby, newborns, anywhere to the senior living with Everly and Halcyon. I mean, we really cater to everyone, but that's our business model. Not everyone's business model caters to that, but we do want to try to be able to have something to offer to everyone and anyone. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also a matter of the baby boomers really learned from the pre-boomers about savings and what the importance of value and spending is. And I think there is some sort of generation gap between baby boomers and Generation X.
Yeah.
And Generation X became a little bit more loose and free and wanted a better value and was okay to spend a little bit more money. And now you get into the generation, the Millennials, and the Millennials don't have a great concept of savings. So I think we have a wide mix of people because the older clientele that has saved and does have money to go out and enjoy themselves, the younger generation wants the same thing as well. So we have a wide mix.
Y'all really do, and there's wonderful reasons behind why we collaborated with you guys on today's session. But we'll let y'all do some deep dive into these generations. I know that's what you're about to share with us. Just a reminder to the audience, if you have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. But Elisa, I'll let you and Nick go ahead and go through these generations for us.
Awesome. All right, so we'll start with baby boomers. You know, they're optimistic, competitive, they are workaholic, and very, very team oriented.
They are our parents.
Yep. Yep, our parents. And we actually have two different management leadership at Halcyon that is in this category. And I actually had a lot of fun kind of putting this together with all the hands-on experience that we have and kind of already what we're doing. And then to see this kind of more on paper and what's being studied is what we kind of learn hands-on. And so it's been kind of fun seeing this. Anyways, so they're motivated by company loyalty, teamwork, and having a place and making sure that they're being pushed and challenged and, you know, having those tasks and duties to uphold. Their communication style is going to be what's the most efficient, either phone calls or face-to-face. But it's also important to know kind of what shaped their, at the time of them growing up, and what shaped them to know kind of what their values are now and why they have these characteristics. So, you know, the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, and Watergate kind of really were major contributors to kind of where they are now. And then their worldview and their values is achievement comes after paying one's dues. You got to sacrifice for success. So the employers, y'all should provide them with specific goals and deadlines, put them in mentorship roles, and offer coaching style feedback. So this is one of my managers that we have at Halcyon to a T. We send the schedule out, our manager schedule out on Excel, but she always likes her email. She likes to have a printed form. She always likes to have her weekly duties, her goals, and her deadlines. And she's been with us now for about a year and 3 months, and it's amazing to kind of see her keep going with us. Alrighty, we'll go to Generation X. So this can be the next generation. They are definitely a lot more flexible, informal, skeptical, and independent. They're shaped by the AIDS epidemic, the Berlin Wall, and the .com webinar boom. They're mainly motivated by diversity, having that workplace balance that we talked about before, their personal and professional interests rather than the company's interests. Their communication style, kind of the same as before. You know, whatever's going to be the most efficient, phone calls or face-to-face. And their role views are favoring diversity. They're quick to move on their employees' scales to meet their needs, resist to change at work if it affects their personal lives. So really knowing how to provide immediate feedback, providing flexible work arrangements and work-life balance, and extend opportunities for personal development.
I think a very important part here is the age of children as well. So this generation is going to have somewhat of that younger children group. And so the personal life is a very important part of this generation, where the baby boomers, they were always taught to got to work, got to provide for the family, whatever it's going to take. And the Generation X has come off of that a little bit and will sacrifice some work to make sure they can have that personal work-life balance.
So for HR and hiring, I mean, this is crucial to know and to ask these questions in your interview process of understanding what their personal needs are, and if it's not the right fit or what you're looking for, then you know right up front. The worst thing you want to do is try to hire someone who have these high expectations and these hours and the demand, and they're just not going to be able to make it, and then you kind of have to start over back at square one. You know, and
being very upfront in the beginning, and they appreciate that. They're not wanting to waste time and start interviewing and training. They want to get going. They want to get people that stuff.
Yep. So knowing what that balance and what the employee is looking for as well is very, very, very important. You know, and this is something that Nick and I do really, really instill, no matter what generation, for our entire team. We want that work-life balance for them, but it's got to fit within our business needs as well. All right, so Millennials, Generation Y. The Millennials is actually kind of broken up now into two different generations. I would love to do a separate webinar on just Millennials. It's very, very dynamic in this, but this is kind of just an encompassing of the overall generation. I mean, my brother and I are 5.5 years apart, and we're in this generation, but we are very, very different. So this is just kind of over encompassing. Millennials.
I'm
And
the XY.
yes. So I'd love, Laura, if we could, if anyone's interested, we could set that up as we talked at the beginning. But to know from millennials, they're competitive, they're civic and open-minded, they're very, very achievement-oriented. They're motivated by responsibility, the quality of their manager, and unique work experiences. Communication style, comes no surprise, text, instant message, email.
We were raised with the very beginning of computers and Oregon Trails and all those original little games on the computer that then now turns into what runs our lives.
Yep, I remember logging in with the dial-up AOL back then, which, and that's something that you grew up in and it's new and you're learning. That's something that you're naturally going to be more comfortable to. And their worldviews and values are going to be seeking challenge, growth, and development, a fun work life and work-life balance. They're likely to leave in an organization if they don't like change. So employees should get to know them personally, get to know kind of their hobbies, their interests, their family. They manage by results. Be flexible in their schedule and work assignments, and provide immediate feedback to them.
Sometimes with this generation, we have to ask ourselves, not what is the employee doing for us, but what can we do for the employee?
Yep. We work for them, not for ourselves. But again, every business is different. Every business's demand needs are different. But knowing how to ask these questions, like we mentioned before, up front, and knowing what the employee's expectations are, and what their values are, to know to make sure that they're put in the right position.
75% of global workforce in 4 years from now will be this generation, and that is an incredible number. That's what we have to pay attention to.
Yep. So giving them the growth, giving them the challenges and development, seeing how we can work with them on the work-life balance, and then being able to give immediate feedback. All right, so our newest generation, now they're only 5% in the workforce, but like I said, they are going to, over the years, obviously be more involved into the workforce. We really, really like to give the younger generation a chance. We like to instill work values in them. We like to help grow them professionally and personally. My dad has always instilled living to hire the high schoolers to be able to help provide them experience when they do go to college. They're not just fish out of water.
Well, back years ago, one thing that I hear from a lot of the baby boomer generation was their first job was in a restaurant. And that has changed over the years. Maybe your first job is
Going on.
not in a restaurant. The restaurant business really provides communication skills, organization skills,
Time management.
customers, and working with customers. And so I think this generation, Generation Z, has lost that kind of first job ethic. And what you learn from the first job, I think this generation pushed into they're pushed faster, and they're well ahead of where Generation X was, or Generation Y was when they started out in their first jobs.
Yeah, when I was doing some of the studies on this, Generation Z is deemed to be the most entrepreneurial generation so far, which is very interesting. They're motivated by diversity, personalization, individuality, and creativity. And with that, that's them building their own company, building their own path for themselves. But us as employers, we can help them get to those goals. If it's not going to be within our company, we can help provide, they can help us, we can help them. Their communication style is going to be, instant message, text, funny email is not a part of that. They'd rather message on Instagram chat or Facebook chat. Not that, us as employers need to cater to that, but just knowing kind of where they're going to be responding and looking to first. Their values are going to be self-identity as digital device addicts. They value independence and individuality. They prefer to work with millennial managers, they're innovative coworkers, and new technologies.
They didn't grow up with a computer; they grew up with a laptop.
Yeah.
and they're mobile, and they're moving. And this is a generation that when I was a child, or when we were children, and we went to church, maybe church is better, but we had coloring books. We used coloring books when we were kids, and we went somewhere with our parents. We had coloring books.
Dinner.
This generation has the iPads and the information overload on the iPad itself and whatnot is advancing this generation far quicker than generation previous.
My best friend's 2-year-old can log on the iPhone, go to video, play video, and swipe to the next video. It's mind blowing. But us as employers, we should be able to offer opportunities to work on multiple projects at a time, provide work-life balance again, and allow them to be self-directed and independent. So for them, you want to give them tasks, give them direction, but give them multiple projects to work on at a time and to be able to provide that feedback to them right away. I thought this was interesting that 40% of Gen Xers want to interact with their boss daily or several times a day. I guess it's like constant affirmation, that constant communication is what they're expecting. I mean, when you have your phone on you all the time, they're expecting. If you're not reaching out to them, maybe they think something's wrong. But this is, I think, our father's biggest struggle is trying to understand that work-life balance and that quickness. Laura, were you jumping on for?
Oh, I just had a question for you guys to add in to the discussion on Gen Z. You talked about early on in the presentation how important communication is, right? I mean, I remember Nick saying that is key.
Yep.
And then kind of looking at, like you said, where particularly Gen Zers are going to be communicating. And you said, as an employer, I think that the fine line is how far you cater to that as an employer. And obviously communication is key, it's needed. But how do you guys kind of manage that as far as how much you're catering to maybe these new communication spaces with Gen Z employees?
So we use a couple different tools. We've really grown and adapted to using the application called GroupMe. You can set up individual groups on there. So we have a leadership group, we have a kitchen group, we have a host group, every different, I guess, category of our business, we have different groups for. And that way, we can get on there immediately, send a message out to communicate about a menu change, schedule change, etc. Anything that we would need to communicate immediately. But we also do emails every night too. So leadership, we send emails every night. So that's kind of catering, to both sides, where the emails are going to be, you read it the next morning, where the instant message, GroupMe is, we expect you to read that right then and there on the spot. I'm not going to go on Instagram and message my employee on Instagram. Not going to happen. But we use the GroupMe, and I think that's a good adaptation with that.
Our father will call a meeting and handwrite us notes. That's his communication as the baby boomer. Then our generation is email driven, and emails have a different level of privacy and respect. Sending an email at midnight is acceptable. Sending a text message at midnight is not acceptable. And so having that communication. Half of my brewery staff wants emails and doesn't like the GroupMe, and the other half doesn't care for emails and wants to do them. So we have to really do both, and then they're all fine. But there is a difference in that communication, and sometimes with how quick Facebook is, it's funny. Sometimes you'll post something on Facebook and the responses are so fast. And so there is a balance that if you're going to have the different generations, you have to apply multiple communications.
Yep. Yeah. So we don't, we don't expect to be sending email, making our hours all over the place. So if we're working at 9 p.m. at night, we send an email to our team. I'm not expecting them to read that the next morning. But if there's a gas blow up or a fire, I hate to not use that. But if there's an on-site issue or something immediately that we need to communicate, then that's what we use Sticker be. And we're respectful and try not to do that after hours unless it's an emergency. So I think those two channels kind of cater to that. And like I said, I'm not going to go on Instagram and Facebook and message my team. Just not gonna happen. Yeah, but cool. Well, I think we're kind of done. We just hope with this information that managers and HR execs can develop multi-generational strategies and recruitment and orientation, talent management, retention, and succession. Let's open it up for any questions and open discussion.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. So I am about to give everyone the capability to unmute themselves if you would like to have discussion, to ask questions. While I do that, I'm going to throw one more question at you guys. And I hope it does not put you on the spot, but it can certainly just be opinion versus, I know you also did a lot of research. But you talked earlier in the presentation about autonomy and kind of the difference in autonomy for Gen X, who are cool to be left to their own devices, versus millennials who are looking for more guidance, looking for maybe positive reinforcement. What are your thoughts on these last two generations, Gen Y and Gen Z? And maybe they're kind of lumped in the same. I know, like we said, some of the year stamps there get a little questionable as to which one you're in, but where would you guys say on the autonomy scale these two generations are?
More independent. I hate to say it, but this generation is kind of the generation that when they were in the younger sports, everybody got a trophy. And so there wasn't that like level of if you first, second, and third place would get trophies, but now everybody gets the trophy no matter what. And so now they have to work harder for themselves and make themselves feel better, self gratification. And so teamwork is good for them, but it's not always the best. That's how I think more actually the younger generation.
Where's
the Generation Y is getting to be better on, rising tide raises all ships. And so you can work together, but there is a lot of that personal gain.
On the Generation Z slide, I can't see the bottom of it. It says, who expect their employers to provide?
Formal training.
Formal training, okay.
Formal training, yes. So more of a kind of corporate structure. With our business, we're, obviously family mom and pop, but we do have some of the corporate structure within our business.
Sure.
We have very strict training materials and binders and guidelines. And this generation looks at that as more of a professional, as a positive thing. I think some older, different generations can see when you get hired, you have to go through X, Y, and Z. It can be daunting and can be intimidating, but this generation wants that level of professionalism. They want that guidance, they want that direction.
Okay, I'm familiar with the safe serve practices, things of that nature. They want that laid out for them. ABC. Yep. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and we do have a question in the chat, guys. The question is, what motivates each one to drive motivation from each generation? Like incentives, can you give examples of what incentives you guys offer? And if those, I think the question would be if those differ dependent on the generation that those are directed at.
Well, I think first and foremost, I think the biggest thing is the goal that they have in their life. We've done a lot of hiring lately in many different positions. And something that I've seen is younger generations are working for themselves. They're motivated by growth within the company. They want to learn as much as they can. and excel. The next generation is starting to get more comfortable in the position they're in. They're about to start a family or just started a family. They're looking to take care of their spouse and their children, and so they're going to be distracted somewhat more so. And growing within a company may not be the initial goal, but solidifying a great position within that company may be their goal. Then you get into the older group, and their goal is to, how can we provide value that we've learned through all these years? And so, and they're looking for either retirement, or they're looking to protect themselves for the future. So they have different goals, and they're not wanting to uproot themselves and have to start over. They want to get really comfortable with where they're at. So growth within that, or not being
not complacent, but comfortable in the position that they're at, that they don't need to see growth or anything else. They just want to keep where they're at and keep strong and their true value in what they're doing, but not necessarily needing that growth path that younger generation wants to see.
And some of that will overlap, because I'm 35 years old and I don't have children. But one of my managers is 40 and he has a 13 and 15-year-old. And his main goal is right now to find a job that he can grow in, but to get them through school and into college. And then he's looking at his next step. And so that opened my eyes to a lot about, he wants to find a good, steady job, get through this chapter of his life, and then reevaluate to then set the next chapter. And so we are working, we have different goals than somebody who's wanting to rise the chain and learn as much as they can in different ways versus in the position.
Yeah, we have a pretty large leadership group at Halcyon. We've got about 7 to 18 members, and they are all from different generations, all wanting different growth paths. They're either comfortable where they're at, want to be able to grow, but the most important thing is to establish a healthy growth and work environment for these generations, in the sense of you don't have to beat each other to get to this position. When you start creating that dynamic of, I have to be better than you, I have to grow to this, creates kind of that animosity and that tension between those employees. So making sure to have clear paths for each member and making sure that those paths don't overlap, so there isn't any of that tension. A lot of the corporate world can kind of get like that. So just being careful that you're setting clear expectations and paths for each of your team, and making sure that that doesn't kind of overlap or provide that competitiveness.
I appreciate so much the examples that you guys have been able to share throughout your presentation. I think that's such an asset to today's information. If there are any more questions, please, like I said, feel free to voice those or throw those into the chat. While you're maybe throwing those into the chat, I again just want to thank so much Nick and Elisa. Like I said, I think you have more expert knowledge than you know, and I appreciate all of those real life examples that you guys shared with us today.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And again, if y'all, Laura, if you want to provide my email to anyone, if anyone has any questions, or if anyone's interested to kind of break any of these generations down more. I know today, hey, there you go.
And location and location is very important to attracting the workforce. One of our locations is in a more of a residential area, less accessible from the immediate highway, and we have more limited staff. We actually don't have as much diversity pulling from that area. The other area is right off the highway, and we're able to get a much more diverse group in all age ranges. And so location is very important to playing a part of attracting a diverse staff. So a lot goes into the planning of the business as well as running the staff.
Great point. Great point. Well, as Elisa mentioned, we will send out to everyone who participated the recording of today's presentation, as well as the slide deck that she shared. Since she is willing, we'll include her contact information in that as well. We appreciate that. I think Ted has one more question before we close out.
Do you guys co-manage the two locations together, or do you divide responsibilities?
Well, we, our operating agreement structure has us on having to make big decisions together and
Okay.
whatnot. But we do not overlap our management. You can only have, we do not play mommy, daddy, go to mommy or go to daddy. It's one person at Halcyon. Lisa is in charge. I'm there to help her and support her, but Elisa is there for the staff. And I do so much more work with the brewery and distribution and up here, that's beer sales, that the day-to-day running of the Halcyon location is not where I'm at. And so we've really developed a good relationship on divided tasks.
Yep. Okay. The worst is having too many hands in the pot, and chain of command is something so important that we have learned in this location. And that's something that we're trying to help, our father with, is that chain of command. When your employees don't know who their direct is or who to report to, or they think they have to report to everyone, it's very chaotic and it's very stressful. And at that point, they tend to just not communicate because they feel that there's so many different people that they're having to kind of communicate with. So establishing chain of command is also something very important to that, and something I think that each of the generations can benefit from.
Super.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've got that worked out. That could be a challenge in any family-run business.
Yeah, well, we are the perfect yin and yang, and I couldn't imagine working with anyone else. So, but no, it's important to have the task and the divide and conquer. I mean, really, it's dividing and conquering. So. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing with us. Good intel.
Of course, thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
Well, we'll see you soon for a beer.
Yeah, thanks.
It's never far away.
Oh, he's ready.
A little buffalo.
That's my COVID test kit. Every morning I smell it and taste it. I'm good.
Make sure you're good. Oh, it's too funny.
Well, I think it's obvious we could do all sorts of webinar topics with Nick and Elisa. They really are a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate it so much, you guys. And thank you to our participants. We will close out this session today, but be on the lookout for future versions of it.
Super. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.